Final Fantasy X, or X, as some like to call it. This was the first Final Fantasy I actually ever played, and to this day, it actually remains my favorite one. It's really good, and I'll tell you why. Um, First thing you should know, though, is that in the far future, I'm going to make a Final Fantasy special where I review all the Final Fantasies, and I don't mean the spin-offs like Dirge of Cerberus or anything like that. I just mean, straight 1 to 13 or 15 or whatever they might release by the time I actually get to finishing all the Final Fantasy games. But I wanted to do this one first because it's my favorite. And the first thing that I like is the story. And the story, I think, is the more unique out of all the other Final Fantasy games, because all the other Final Fantasy games, they have evil empires and princesses that need to be saved and things like that, or chosen ones and things like that. This is completely different. The storytelling is completely it's it's not at all from an objective. It's from the point of view of Titus, the main character here, who looks just a little bit like Meg Ryan, and he's part. It begins in this city called Xanarkand, and Titus is this athletic blitzball player, and blitzball is this weird sport that they play underwater in this watery sphere thing that floats. Kind of reminds me of Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith when they have that opera thing going on that you're kind of like, what the hell is that? Only cooler, and maybe Star Wars stole it from this. Who knows? But anyway, and he's playing this game, he's chilling out, and then all of a sudden this huge monster comes out, and like he gets transported to like this other world. Well, he's in the same world, but he thinks he's in a different time period. And I say that in quotations because maybe he's not really in a different time period, but I don't want to give anything away. But it's really interesting because you think it starts out as a time travel story, but then there's some things that don't add up, and it's like, wait, if I'm in the past, then how is that possible? And it's really interesting. And the whole backstory of the world, Spira, is that thousands of years ago, the two warring nations, Xanarkand and Bevil, they pretty much wrecked shit to hell using all their machines and stuff. And so, like, they say the gods wanted to banish all use of machines, so nobody's allowed to use any machines. And it's like this strict kind of religious sentiments that this tradition sort of that controls everyone and influences everything. And also what I like is that it's pretty much its own world. It's kind of hard to describe. Like, you really have to play it to like get what I'm saying. But like in other Final Fantasies and in other RPGs as well, you have like knights and castles and dragons. This is none of that. This has more of like an Eastern kind of religious philosophy going on. There's people, when people die, they get part of this like collected consciousness, whatever you want to call it, called like the faith. And Titus meets Yuna, who's the other central character, and the whole premise of the game is that and here's the interesting thing, Titus, you care about Titus, but like Titus is not actually part of the group that goes off and saves the world. He just happens to tag along, and the Yuna is a summoner, and what summoners do is that they're supposed to go on this pilgrimage to defeat this monster called Sin. And Sin is just like this huge kind of Godzilla kind of fish thing that just kills stuff. And they do this repeatedly because they say Sin was introduced in the world to punish people for using machines and things like that. But obviously there's more to the whole plot and conspiracy thing. And but it's just really, I just find it really unique, and it's unlike any other Final Fantasy game out there. And in terms of gameplay, it's your typical turn-based, but what I really like about it, and what I really think that they should have done in all the other, Final Fantasy games or any other RPG really, is that you can switch characters in the middle of the battle. So if one of your characters is close to dying, you could just like be like, oh, tap out, and just switch him or her for someone else. And because I always found it funny how you know if you die, your 3 or 4 characters just die, and you're like, well, if this were real life, the battle would still be going on because you have like other people, your other friends there, so they're not just gonna stand there. And graphics wise, no, it's pretty aged by now. It's by the turn of the millennium. You can tell this was all like a breakthrough back then. It's like characters with voices and real-time facial expressions, complete 3D environments. And obviously by now you might be like, well, duh, everything has that now. But some of the in-game cutscenes, because you have the in-game cutscenes that use the lesser complicated graphics, and then you have like the really pretty cutscenes, which PlayStation never had a problem with. PlayStation has been doing really good cutscenes since like the beginning of their fucking company and stuff. But and some of the in-game cutscenes might be a little awkward because they're like, oh no, it's like, I'm mad, but I can't really show it because I don't have that many, whatever you want to call it, in order to make myself look mad, kind of thing. The characters are very memorable. There's always, in a lot of RPGs, in any RPG, you have, like that hot girl who's kind of young to be hot that much, and you're kind of awkward. You're like, should I really have the hots for her or not? Is she legal? And then you have like the reserved kind of female lead, and then you have like the annoying guy. Titus is kind of like the annoying athletic guy. Then you have like the silent badass, who's this guy here, Auron. And so you have those typical kind of characters, but the overall story, I think, is really where it has its strength. And it's really good. I fucking like it, and there's so much to explore. There's a lot of stuff to explore. You have like ultimate weapons that you can find, and you have like and because the summoners in Final Fantasy games, you can like summon these monsters, and they usually call them Eidolons, but in here they call them Aeons. So they're actually quite central to the story, because the summoner, that's a part of that's why she's called Summoner, because she summons these Aeons to help her out to defeat Sin. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The funny thing is that one of the things that you can do on the side is you can play Blitzball whenever you want, and it's like you're inside. You eventually, you go fight Sin. You're at the end of the game. You're inside Sin, which is at the end of every Final Fantasy game. No sense. Just it's all the same, because like the end of every. You see, you have your human antagonist, and in this one he's Seymour, and he's really fucking douche. He's the douchiest of all douchers, and you're really gonna hate him because he shows up like 10 times, and you're gonna have to kill him like 10 times, and he only gets more annoying each subsequent time that you fight him. But and then you have like the giant's kind of unknown force that's like pulling the strings on everything since like the dawn of time or something like that. The end of every Final Fantasy is just basically, let's all just go and fucking kill God. There's our answer. What do we do now? Let's just fucking kill God and then just get this all over with. So yeah, yes, there are some cliches and stuff, and Titus can get a little annoying, not as annoying as some other protagonists from other Final Fantasy games, though. So he's bearable. But yeah, it's really good. Oh, and the thing about the whole Blitzball thing is that you could be like in the middle of nowhere, and it's like because you have like these save points, and then it could just be like, oh, you want to play Blitzball? It's like, okay, sure. We're in the middle of a fucking mountain, but okay. Let's play Blitzball. Well, fuck.